This horrifying case shocked all of Great Britain with its sheer inhumanity. A renowned author vanished without a trace and the police had no leads. It soon became clear that they were dealing with a cruel and unjust crime, the details of which would shock anyone. Helen Elizabeth Bailey was born in 1964 in the small English village of Ponteland. She grew up and finished school there. From a young age, she loved to keep diaries, describing almost everything that happened around her. After school, Helen moved to London to study. At first, she wanted to become a forensic pathologist and even earned a degree in physiology. However, after her postgraduate studies and an internship at a London teaching hospital, she decided that such work wasn't for her. Helen wanted her career to be creative. Soon, the future author found just such an opportunity. Helen took part in creating several famous cartoon characters, including Garfield. She also worked on characters for games by the Nintendo company. In 1987, she met John Sinfield, the head of a licensing company that worked with famous brands like Snoopy, Garfield, and others. After some time, they began dating, and in 1996, they married. After the wedding, they bought a large house in a prestigious London neighborhood. Around this same time, Helen began writing short stories, which later formed the basis of her famous book series. In 2008, she released the first book in the Mad World of Electra Brown series, which brought her widespread popularity among teenage girls. Over the next 2 years, Helen wrote 4 more books in this series. In 2010, she was nominated for an award given to authors of popular teen books. In total, she published 22 books in her career. It seemed a happy and carefree future awaited the couple. But in February 2011, an unexpected tragedy struck. The couple was vacationing in Barbados when one day Helen's husband drowned in the sea. This event effectively broke Helen. After 15 years of marriage, she couldn't imagine what to do next. She later wrote that she cried almost every day she left the house. To cope with her grief, she started a personal blog where she shared her thoughts and feelings. Helen also joined a Facebook group for people who had lost loved ones. It was there, in October 2011, that the author met Ian Stewart. The man had recently lost his wife and was raising 2 sons, aged 15 and 18, alone. They talked for a long time, and at some point, a mutual affection grew between them. Eventually, they decided to meet in person. They went to the movies, had dinner, and took a walk in the park. Even though the date went great, Helen decided she wasn't ready for a new relationship yet. Ian was understanding, and they continued to chat online. But soon, the couple met again, and during one of their walks, Helen realized she didn't want to lose this man. From then on, they started dating, and eventually decided to move in together. For their life together, they bought a new house, as Helen was uncomfortable living with her new partner in the home she had once shared with her late husband. Ian sold his old house for £500,000, and he and Helen bought a new one for $1.5 million, where they began their life together. Stewart's sons also lived with them. Over the next 5 years, the couple's relationship only grew stronger, and Helen wrote that her life was truly starting to get back on track. She published several more books, including her first work aimed at an adult audience. In the book, she essentially chronicled her journey from a state of complete loss and endless grief to finding new happiness. Everything was going really well, and Helen was already discussing her upcoming wedding plans with friends. However, in April 2016, the unexpected happened. The woman disappeared after taking her dog for a walk. Her disappearance became known after Ian Stewart called the police. This call struck the police as odd. It seemed the man couldn't recall any distinguishing features of the woman he had been in a relationship with for 5 years. The operator asked him for Helen's height, her phone numbers, and her eye color. Stewart couldn't remember any of it. He couldn't even name her date of birth.
Please, how can I help?
Hello there. My partner has been missing since Monday and not contacted anyone. Said she was going away, hasn't gone any that way she said she was going. So we've just decided we should report it.
What's your partner's name?
Helen Bailey.
And what's her date of birth?
Oh, crikey. God, she phoned me there. 22nd. Right, just let me double check. 1 second. Oh, God.
Her eye colour.
Oh, my God. How do you forget these things? I don't know at the moment. Sorry, it's just gone out of my head.
That's no problem.
Sorry. God, that's terrible. She left a note. She said in the note something like, I need space and time alone. I'm going to Broadstairs. please don't contact me in any way.
And was that note a bit of a shock? Were you expecting it at all?
No, I wasn't. Well, yes, it was a shock. She has talked about it, but it was still a shock.
Yeah.
She has talked about wanting space because things just haven't been going well for her recently, or for us.
She's definitely not at home, no.
No, brother last night, I've literally checked everywhere. We have got quite a large house, but I have literally checked everywhere.
According to him, Helen had left a note asking for some time alone and telling him not to contact her. She had supposedly gone to their cottage in the town of Broadstairs, but the author never appeared there. The man was also unable to provide the exact address of the cottage they co-owned. Police checked the cottage, but there were no signs of Helen. The writer also had a house in Kent, but she hadn't been there either. With no other leads, the search effectively came to a halt. It wasn't until April 16th, 5 days after Helen's disappearance, that something interesting happened. Her smartphone briefly connected to the Wi-Fi router at her cottage in Kent. This led police to believe the woman was fine and had indeed arrived at her home. At the same time, police discovered that withdrawal requests were being made from the writer's bank account. This could also suggest that she was okay, but for some reason did not want to be contacted. Her credit card was also used several times. However, the police remained skeptical of the situation and, with each passing day, focused more and more on Ian Stewart as a suspect. His behavior seemed strange from the very beginning. He didn't even know the date of birth of the woman he had lived with for 5 years. In subsequent interviews, he could barely recall any details from the day Helen disappeared. And most strangely, he told the police that he had accidentally lost the note she had left. As for the interviews he gave to journalists, they were filled with emotional speeches and tears. The man said he couldn't imagine his life without Helen, pleaded for her to come home, and even promised to bring her beloved dog to her if she asked, anything to see her alive and well. Against this backdrop, his actions a few months after the writer's disappearance look extremely strange. He went on a 2-week vacation to Spain. They had planned this trip together with Helen, having bought the tickets in advance. The writer's relatives and friends, who continued to live with the heavy burden of uncertainty, were outraged by his actions. How could a man who, just days before, had tearfully begged Helen to return home, go on vacation to another country? For the police, this step was just more confirmation that they needed to dig deeper into Ian. On July 11th, exactly 3 months after the writer's disappearance, detectives came to his home and arrested Ian Stewart. The entire event was filmed. As the charges were read to him, the man's legs gave out and he sat down on the steps. According to the investigation,
I'm arresting you on suspicion of the murder of Helen Bailey.
Are you joking?
And of disposing her body in a manner to likely to instruct the coroner, and of theft of money of Helen Bailey. Okay, so you do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you are mentioned in question, something that you may to rely in court. Anything you do say may be given evidence. Do you understand that?
I guess so.
Okay, alright, do you want to sit down?
Bloody hell, why?
Okay, well, we're going to speak to you at the police station, all right?
Police station.
So what needs to happen, you need to probably get some clothes on, okay, and then you need to go to the police station, and these officers will transport you to the police station.
Why? I don't understand. What happened? You can't tell me.
We can't discuss it.
We can't discuss it at the moment. We'll talk to you when we get to the police station, alright?
he killed Helen Bailey to seize her considerable assets and savings. During questioning at the police station, Stewart denied his guilt, while detectives scoured their house and the surrounding property, and this search yielded results. On July 15th, Helen Bailey's body was discovered in a cesspit located on their property. Next to the woman's body was her beloved dog. Medical experts determined that the woman had died from suffocation, but they could not determine if she was still alive when she was thrown into the pit. The police had searched the house and grounds several times before, but they had simply not seen the pit. The reason was that Stewart had parked Helen's Jeep directly over it. With a substantial amount of evidence, investigators tried to get a confession. During questioning, they laid out everything the police had on Ian, but the man just sat there with a lost look on his face, not answering any questions. The detectives had one more question to answer. If Stewart killed Helen for personal enrichment, why did he wait 5 long years? The answer turned out to be painfully obvious. In 2012, Helen had written a will stating that all her property and savings should go to her relatives and a close friend. However, in 2014, she changed the document, adding Stewart's name. Now, he was to inherit the majority of her money and property. Thus, in the event of Helen's death, Stewart would become the owner of savings, assets, and real estate totaling about £5 million sterling. This enormous sum would have allowed him to live in luxury, wanting for nothing. Soon, medical experts uncovered another gruesome fact. For several months, Ian had been drugging Helen with sleeping medication that he had obtained for himself with a doctor's prescription. The woman noticed something was wrong with her, as evidenced by several internet searches. She had looked up why she was constantly feeling sleepy. One day, the man gave her a large dose of the drug, after which he ended her life and hid the body in the pit. He then began to gradually transfer money from her bank account to their joint account, and also tried to sell one of the houses Helen owned. But he couldn't do it without her present. The trial of Ian Stewart began in January 2017. Instead of admitting his guilt, he concocted a frankly absurd story in an attempt to avoid punishment. According to him, Helen and her dog had actually been kidnapped by 2 men named Nick and Joe, who were demanding a ransom of £500,000. Stewart claimed he didn't report it to the police for fear they might kill Helen. Of course, no one believed this story. On February 22, 2017, the court found him guilty of the murder of Helen Bailey and sentenced him to life in prison. The criminal will only be eligible to apply for parole at the age of 90. Immediately after this, detectives began to investigate the suspicious death of Stewart's former wife, who died in 2010. Authorities now suspect that the man may have also been drugging her for a long time until the poor woman suffered an epileptic seizure. However, proving his guilt will be difficult. The woman was cremated. Despite this, the police and the court continue to dig into the case. Stewart was formally arrested on suspicion of his wife's murder, with a trial set for 2022. In any case, this ruthless and calculating monster will spend the rest of his life in prison. His sons, who had no idea what their father had done, are now forced to live with this heavy burden. This story shows us how low a person can sink in the pursuit of wealth. Helen Bailey just wanted to rebuild her life after her husband's death and escape her endless grief. For several years, she thought she had succeeded. The writer had no idea that the man she had fallen in love with had been planning to kill and rob her from the very beginning. This case can rightly be called not just unjust, but despicable. It is so monstrous that drawing any simple conclusions is simply impossible. Take care, and thank you for watching.